Good morning. My name is Tim Guleri. I'm managing partner at Sierra Ventures based in Silicon Valley. And today it's my pleasure to walk you through the fundraising pitch deck flow, which is something I talk about to our early stage founders. Sierra specializes in Series C and Series A companies. And so this is something I do quite often. And it's my pleasure to share that pitch deck flow with us. So it's super important when you're talking to a venture capitalist to realize that the goal of this is to make sure that you can get to the next meeting with the venture capitalist where you get into more detail about the company. So the goal of the pitch deck is to ensure in a very efficient way you give the information you need to the VC to then get called for the next meeting. So the first slide is a company snapshot, and this is where you talk about where is the company located, how many employees do you have, what is the technology or the space that you're focused on as a company, and then also, of course, if there's any quick revenue snapshot or acceleration snapshot, I would just put that graphic on the first slide. So you have the venture capitalists leaning in at that moment once you do that. The next slide is nailing the positioning of the company and how large the market is that you're selling into. So you would say something like, we are the leader in XYZ in ABC space, right on that slide. And right after that, you would talk about the total addressable market being $10-15 billion, growing at 20%. And the reason for that data is that big companies are built in big markets. So VCs want to see that the market that you're selling into is large, and therefore you have the opportunity, if you execute correctly, to become a large company. Next is the product section, which is 2 or 3 slides. You talk about the product in the architecture slide. You talk about your competition, because the VC is thinking this looks like a great company and a product, but is it a highly competitive market? So we think about things like, is this a red ocean or a blue ocean market? Red ocean being it's highly competitive, do not invest. Blue ocean being there's competition, but not too much of it. This is also where I would advise you guys to give a demo, because demos bring that entire product to life. And then if there's any IP or intellectual property, you want to talk about that in this particular section. So this is the first third of the deck. Next, you get into talking about the business model and KPIs, etc. In the middle of this deck, the first business model slide needs to nail whether you are a product-led growth company, are you going to market using a corporate sales force, or are you doing it using a classic enterprise selling motion. So this is important so that the VC begins to understand what's going to come next, which is when you discuss sales and marketing. So the next slide is the details on sales and marketing. This is where you talk about the lead gen engines you have in place, what kind of conversion you see from a lead to a sales qualified opportunity, and then what are some of these mechanisms that are working for you. In the sales side of this section, you talk about the kind of salespeople that you have employed or hope to employ. This is where you talk about what the on-target earning of a sales guy might be, what quota does a salesperson carry, and what sort of performance to quota do you expect. Now you transition into traction and metrics. Now I do a lot of SaaS investments. So in this section, you talk about very important metrics like your gross retention and net retention metrics, your ARR, your numbers that you've seen historically and what you expect to see, lifetime value to the cost of customer acquisition, gross margins. This slide is meant to convey the leverage in the business model. So now we transition to the last third of the deck and we get into the very important financial metrics. So in this slide, you show annualized actuals for the last 2 years or 1 year and this year, and then forward look for the next 3 years on where you expect the recurring revenue numbers to go. This is super important because, again, you're trying to show the VC that you can build a large company as you look into the next 3 to 5 years, which is about as perfect as you can get in terms of a forward look for your enterprise. Next, you talk about futures. Now, this is super important because VCs like us want to invest in companies that have the potential of becoming large. Large could be a $100 million ARR company, $200 million ARR company. So put a slide together that conveys to the VC how you get to 100 million in ARR, and do the math for them, please. So if you think you want to get 2,000 customers, each of those customers on average paying you $200,000 in recurring revenue, do that math for them in a little triangle slide, and then you can show some logos that suggest these are the kind of companies that you expect to get. And the final slide is use of funds. This is where you talk about, we're raising X in this round. We expect this to last for the next 18 to 24 months. And it's also important to talk about what you'll be using that money for. And also convey in this section that you should comfortably be able to get to interesting metrics by month 14 from the time of raising this capital. You'll be a great company to get back into the market and raise the next round. So that's the Sierra fundraising pitch deck flow. And of course, if you want to review this again, you'll find this information also posted on our Sierra website, and along with a lot of other resources for early stage founders. If you are a great early stage entrepreneur, please send us an email or send me a DM on either LinkedIn or Twitter. And my contact information is right below. We would love to hear from you. And we are always ready to help the next great entrepreneur build an iconic company here at Sierra. And I hope you enjoyed this session.